Hey, Stella.
Hi, Rael. Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming to BASI Live Conversations. Today's installment is Conversations in Commonality. Before I go any further, I want to let you know that all of your donations, proceeds from this event will be going towards the Kathy Grant Scholarship. We've already allocated funds for 2 scholarships to be awarded annually. So any other funds that we raise will give opportunities for other prospective students to attend BASI education. I would like to take a moment to introduce my guests today, or my fellow panelists. I have Rael Isacowtiz, BASI owner and founder. Rael, would you like to say a few words to our audience?
So happy to be here. Happy to be in your presence and honored to have you as our moderator.
Thank you.
So it's a fantastic experience, and thank you to everyone for attending. We really appreciate these conversations and these meetings.
And my other guest today is Brian Westpoint. He's a social and wellness advocate. Brian, would you like to say a few words before we get started?
Happy Wednesday, everyone. So glad to be here and have these conversations that are necessary.
Yeah. So the goals of these conversations is to, one, continue bringing to the forefront issues of social injustice, inequalities, especially as it pertains to the fitness industry. We want to keep these conversations going. We want you to participate. Send your comments to our social media, Facebook, and to our Instagram. I know we're filming on Instagram Live right now, so I know we have other people that are watching from our social media. We have several other conversations that will be continuing throughout the year. And then I know, Rael, you've been on a whirlwind with this, our BASI Live. Last week, it was with Roy. Mm-hmm. And then today we have this. And then on Friday, you're doing another event. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So first, just going back to my interview of last week, and I believe it's on our YouTube channel. Yes. It's really an interview worth watching. It's so interesting. It gives insight to the struggles against injustice and apartheid in South Africa during the 40s and 50s. It is a biography of my Uncle Jock, my dad's brother, and my dad. They were involved in very much the same activities. It's fascinating. I learned so much, although I lived it with my dad all my life. Roy did exhaustive research. It's an incredible interview and so educational, fascinating, and a beautiful springboard to this initiative, these discussions we're having today. It started in South Africa in the 40s and the 50s. We are in the United States, and on Friday I go back to South Africa to raise money for a charity there. And it is, I've called it Empowering Women. All the money is going to empowering women. That's exactly what it is. It's to raise women up, women that are underprivileged, that are sometimes suffering abuse. I read some of the testimonials from this fund yesterday. Yes. It is incredible. So those who can attend, 100% of the proceeds from the math class and the Q&A are going to, I wish I remembered the name by heart, but I don't. I will. I recited it this morning, and now I forgot it. But Friday, I will give a full introduction about the fund. It's an incredible charity. Again, you can find the information on our social media. And so it's kind of going full circle for me. Having been born in South Africa, I live here, going back to South Africa, and to give back to the country of my birth.
Well, we are very excited about that, and we hope you will join us again on Friday with Rael and his math class, which is always a unique experience, an exciting experience, but also the Q&A following it. And again, all proceeds will be going to the Lasidi Balito.
No.
See, this is where I'm bad because I can't pronounce
La
it.
sedi la botta.
Okay, see, this is why you need a South African to say it. Say it one more time for us.
The screen went off.
My cue card.
La sedi la batto. I said it wrong. I said botta. La sedi la batto. La sedi la batto.
Great. So let's dive into this conversation now that we're all
Now that we've embarrassed ourselves
enough. Let's move on. So a lot of organizations have been moving towards diversity. It started with the affirmative action laws that came out, and now we find that we had a perfect storm, and that perfect storm being everyone home from COVID, witnessing the George Floyd murder, and then the Black Lives Matter protesting. And Brian, I wanted to bring you into the conversation because as one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter in San Diego, how do we keep the momentum going? We were at a peak where you saw it in the news everywhere and all the time, and people were always talking about it, and it became not such a local movement, but a global movement. But now we're all back in our little buckets, so to speak, or our pockets. So how do we keep this going?
Yeah, we have gone back a little bit, to our little pockets, which was somewhat expected. It was really great to see the unity of the people, but it was also something that I think a lot of us could sort of watch and understand that it wasn't sustainable. So now is the real fight, is what I like to call it. Not that was fake or to say anything wrong about that, but this is the later rounds, the ones that are really going to be the important ones. I think that we're in a good place, a better place for sure, just because it is still at the top of everyone's minds. And for me, the important minds that it's on is in institutional minds, whether it be universities, the workplace, I think that's where the cultures really have to shift to make the change that we're going to have to see. So I think just having it sort of institutionalized, knowing that racism exists and having that be the mindset in institutions. And I think then we can make the headway. So, hopefully we can continue that on with my help.
Absolutely. And speaking of institutions and various business organizations, Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple. In 2013, he wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal, and he said that diversity was very important to him, and he wanted to move towards that in Apple, lower, middle, and upper management. But I'm going to read what he really wrote, and it was very interesting because he said people are more willing to give themselves when they feel that they themselves are being fully recognized and embraced, and that means a lot in a corporate environment. Rael, how does that feel for you as being the founder of BASI?
In all honesty, something that Brian said really resonates with me, and that is that he hopes this will be long-lasting, because often after atrocities like George Floyd, there's this outrage, but it is fleeting and it passes. And it is in the fabric of my being. From the moment I can remember life, it was instilled in me that all people are equal. All people deserve dignity. And all people deserve respect. So in a conversation with Brian and myself yesterday, we were talking about politically correct, and we both said, politically correct, all you need to do is respect. Have respect for people, and that respect needs to be authentic. And I believe that BASI, I founded BASI in 1989, and BASI is an extension of myself. And I so believe in respecting all human beings, and that all humans deserve dignity and equality, that really BASI has always been about that. That is part of the ethos. It's part of the DNA of BASI. So I think we need to, at times, recalibrate, as we did with the Kathy Grant Scholarship. and we redefined it as being for an African American woman and an African American man. Kathy Grant being African American, I've been giving scholarships. BASI has been awarding scholarships since the very beginnings. But I found it necessary to make even a stronger statement that Kathy was African American, and it should go in her name to an African American woman and man. That is what she wanted. So we have always walked our talk. BASI is a very, very diverse community. All genders, religions, nationalities, colors. BASI is a rainbow. But although it's diverse, we also share common values. So you call this commonality. It's not just diversity, it's finding commonality.
Awesome. So
Can I take a moment to speak on, can I take a moment to speak on that? I just think it's important. I think what you're saying, Rael, is super important there, that you have been doing this fight for a very long time. You know, I've known you before George Floyd, right? So I've seen the work that you've been doing before George Floyd. But what interests me and what I was super, super proud of was the fact that you didn't say then, I've already done this and that, right? I've already done these things. Because a lot of people said that, oh, I don't need to do anything more. I have a black friend, right? Or I hired a black guy yesterday, right? But you still took the initiative and said, you know what, I'm doing a lot, but I got to do more, right? Because that's what we need more now, Rael. We need more, right? We've all been trying, but we need more. That's not enough. So I just think that really has to be highlighted. Starting to get.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Absolutely, Brian. We cannot rest on our laurels. Definitely not when it comes to issues of social injustice, social inequality. We cannot. We always have to strive to be better. It's never enough. Never, ever, ever is it enough. I can never rest with that one. We always have to strive to do better all the time.
Yeah, you've always said that you can only know better than what you've done the day before. I only know what I know from yesterday, and I can only do better from that. And that's one of my guiding principles, and I've learned that from you.
Thank you.
So, Brian, I wanted to ask you a question, because when we talk about scholarships and creating opportunities, for brown and black people, it's often perceived as a handout, or sometimes it's perceived as disingenuous. How can we as a company help others understand that this is an opportunity? It's not a handout. We know that Pilates education is expensive. We know that one of the barriers to entry into this profession is the education. So how does that conversation evolve so that people are more open and receptive to this?
As opposed to like kind of them feeling like it's going to be a handout or like you're just giving stuff away. Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of meeting a quota, which we're not. We're not obligated to.
Yeah, well, it's kind of biased for me just because I know the intention. As I was just speaking, I kind of, I know Rael's intention, so I understand how to see through it. But an interesting perspective would be from other people. How are they able to kind of look in and say, is this real, or is he just doing this because of the climate right now?
Right.
Yeah. That's a good question. I would say number one for me would just be the effort that is put into it. So just what you're able to show. So, anyone can think anything from the surface, but I think just the integrity that you guys are giving the scholarship away with, I think that'll kind of show through, because I think from the outside, I know I'd be skeptical, right? When I hear things like that, I am skeptical. Okay, let's see what this is, right? You've seen this a lot. So, I understand the skepticism, but with the integrity that goes on up there, I've seen it, I've felt it. So I think that it'll dissipate quickly with that, if there is any initially.
So let's dive even deeper, because we know that the fitness industry as a whole is very biased. And one of the reasons is that fitness itself, when people think about fitness, they think they have to be in shape, that it's about a body type, it's about a body look. And instead of it being about wellness, and Pilates is one of the industries that I hate to say is leading that image of having to be a certain type. And I know that there's a lot of times when people talk about doing Pilates, they're like, I need to get in shape to do Pilates. What is that about?
I think it honestly, it comes from the early days, not the early days of Pilates, but the early days of the surge in popularity. So much of that was based on hype, was based on celebrities, and was based on dancers. And the dance industry is steeped in certain images. You need to look a certain way. You need to behave a certain way. You need to be a certain weight. And if you did not fit into that mold, you couldn't be a dancer. Very sad for me to say, but in the early days, you had to be white. And thank God that mold was broken and shattered by people like Kathy, who did so much to shatter those molds. So it's those early days of dance together with celebrities, together with a certain image, together with a certain mold. So people, all they saw Pilates, and then they would show certain celebrities and dancers. And let's face it, Pilates has been probably 95% female dominant. So certainly men felt uncomfortable doing Pilates. And, Joseph Pilates was a man. And by all accounts, not my account, but first-hand accounts from him, he created the system thinking it would be for men.
Exactly.
And luckily we had women that kept the flame alive, because if it was left to men, there would be no Pilates today. So, but we need to shatter those images, because body shape, body type, color, weight, fitness level, age, none of those things should be barriers, and finances should not be a barrier. So we need to shatter those barriers, and I've always believed that, and I've always tried to do my best. I can always do better. But I gave a workshop, Pilates for men, and I think it was a successful workshop, and one of the participants came to me afterwards. He said, I learned so much, but I got to tell you, you fell short in one way. I said, and what was that? He said, well, I was in the waiting area. There was not one magazine I could relate to. They were all about women's fashion, and there's nothing for men. And so you didn't create an environment that welcomed men. And we need to be aware of that. Since then, I improved.
Yes, I can tell you, we have plenty of magazines now for men and women. I'm enjoying a lot of the fender bender ones. So we definitely have a lot of that. The fitness industry remarkably has one example of a no judgment zone. And I'm talking specifically about Planet Fitness. And that was their whole motto, no judgment. No matter what shape you were in, what size, whatever, you were welcomed in that environment. And Brian, being one of our wellness advocates, do you see that in other areas in the fitness industry? I know you participate in other activities.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear y'all speak about the Pilates world, because although I'm not very, learned in the Pilates world, I've taken a class or two, which I very much enjoyed, Rael. But, more so for myself, it'd be yoga, it'd be cycling, things like that. And even those two spaces, even the yoga space is, predominantly, definitely female and white, truthfully. The same with cycling. The cycling space, I'm the only brother out there a lot of times, So those are spaces that I understand the lack of diversity. But the cool thing about everything that is going on now is that I've seen in those two particular spaces that there is infrastructural change, that there is at the top, they're looking at this like we have to get more people involved. And I think an important thing is that it's changing is before it was just like, hey, we have opportunities, come and get them. They're not understanding that most people don't even have the resources to get to those opportunities, right? They don't have the networks, they don't have the finances. So now actually making the decision to actually, we're gonna go and get and recruit and bring, you know what I'm saying? As opposed to, hey, we're here, no applicants. It's like, well, that's not really, make more of an effort, like we were saying before, right? We gotta do more. So I love the fact that like the cycling clubs that I'm inclusive in, that I'm included in, they're being much more active in terms of making sure that they're being inclusive, actively doing outreach to bring people in. So that's really good to see. So that's positive. So I think the way to do that is, again, at the top. I mentioned yesterday that my affiliation with CrossFit and that, the fact that I've had this beforehand, before George Floyd, anything, you could not be judgmental going in there. The person that was in the quote unquote worst shape or in the best shape, their only requirement was to work hard and don't judge, right? But you got to work hard and don't judge. And part of working hard is not judging people, right? Is to be less egotistical, is to control yourself. So I've been fortunate to be a part of those things.
Yeah, it's very interesting that, I was doing a lot of research, and one of the main things that came up was that a lot of corporations were saying, well, we're going to work on diversity. But when it came to actually looking at how they were reaching people to bring in, they were falling short. So they were saying, yeah, but we want to invite, we want to hire, blah, 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 blah. But they lack the network and the resources to actually reach valuable applicants. And then they were like, well, we had no one apply, or there was no one available. So therefore, we've done our due diligence when, like Brian said, it is more of an active. We really have to reach out.
Be active.
Yeah, we have to really be more proactive in this.
People are actively pushed away, so they're actively being pushed away. So we can't just say, oh, come on, get us, no, they have to literally be pulled, right? Because they're being put.
Yeah, especially in areas, in environments and industries where they're not known or not welcomed or feel like they're not welcomed. It has to be really something that we're very actively engaging in the community. Mm-hmm. And, the other thing about fitness is that fitness is perceived not as wellness. And I know you and Brian both are wellness people. You always look at things holistically as wellness. And in, a lot of brown and black communities, it's not considered, fitness is considered a luxury. And again, I think only you two can talk to me about this, but how do we change that myth, that perception, where it's not about, the luxury of it, it's a necessity in life?
It is. I think it goes back to the healthy body, healthy mind, and I'm going to extend that even further to healthy society. If we've got unhealthy people, and when I say unhealthy, I mean in body, mind, and spirit, society is unhealthy. And that's why I believe strongly that the Pilates we do does not end at the four walls. It must seep out into society. We are changing society. We're not just changing bodies. That's really important. And it is about educating people, because it's true. If people are struggling to put food on the table, the last thing they are going to think about is going to take a $150 Pilates session to look more beautiful. No, that is the last thing on their mind. So we need to reach out, educate people that it doesn't have to be Pilates. It can be a walk. It can be a jog. It can be just getting outdoors, feeling fresh air. You can find ways of achieving health and well-being, eating better. What you put into your body is important. And looking at those around you. And in terms of Pilates, we need to create pathways for people that do not have the finances to come. So we have the apprenticeship program. Right. And the apprenticeship program is a really good program to bring people in who cannot afford regular Pilates, So they can come and take a session with a trainee, a student who has not yet graduated, at a very much a steeply reduced rate. I'm proud of that program because it allows people to come in. Look, I said yesterday in a conversation between us, I would far rather teach someone for free who I know is appreciating every moment and soaking it in, then get paid a lot for a private session by someone who really, it equates to me babysitting for an hour. And you know, just putting them through a workout so that they can say that they did a Pilates session and, you know, go and have their lunch or what. So, you know, there's a place for everyone. And I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that after so many years of teaching, what's important to me is that I spend the limited time I have left giving to those that it's going to mean something to them and create change in their lives.
Brian, you also mentioned, I know we had a conversation yesterday, and you were also talking about the overall wellness in the communities. What other ideas can you offer, or suggestions that you can offer that would help us reach the community and kind of get them involved? You know, it's really a matter of life and death right now for brown and black people.
Well, I think the number one muscle that we have to train, you know, is the mind. We're going to have to change the mindset, you know, just overall and how it is that we view wealth. Because this is what I really struggled with my whole life, frankly, is where is the line? Because I grew up in those environments. You know, it's why I'm such an advocate for health now, because that's literally the most unhealthy environment that you can live in. So like I had to live my life to be optimum health, right? Just to even to compensate for all that. But, you know, perhaps I don't know how to really explain myself, but when I go back, when I speak to colleagues who might still be in those environments, you know, the hardest thing to change is the mindset. You know, the mindset is that that's not important, you know, that it's not a priority. And I get that because of everything that's going on. I understand that, I've lived it literally, but it's still important, you know. So how do we still get this message across? It's something that I am struggling with, and that I am looking for the way, but I know we're going to have to change the mindset. I'm unsure of figuring out how that is. You know, how do you change someone's mind? It's kind of, you know.
Yeah.
I'm open to suggestions.
Well, I think one of the ways is that we must reach out to communities that are underprivileged. And say that in the sincerest of ways. I wish there was a better word. That they are financially challenged and they cannot see health and well-being in the same way because they are just struggling to put food on the table. So one of the things we've done in BASI is try to go to communities like that and offer Pilates training, mat work training to people. So we did it with a dance company called The Wooden Floor.
Yes.
And that is for an underprivileged community. We gave 4 of the students scholarships to do our full mat training. And actually the faculty, the BASI faculty, stepped up and trained the people for free. They didn't pay for those hours, and they went through a training. Now, my hope is that they will then go out into the community and teach the mat work and teach this holistic approach to the body, to well-being. It's not only how many push-ups you can do, but it's about leading a more healthy life. And we need to create platforms for that. I think there's some amazing athletes that are doing that. LeBron James, he gives so much. He gives back to the community in whatever way he can to educate and to lift people up. That's what we need to do. We need to lift people up.
Yeah, so we're back to that reach one, teach one philosophy, which I spoke to you about. So we're both, it seems like the 3 of us together right now, we're like, we need to change the messaging. We need to reach out to these communities. During COVID, it seems like even more challenging because everyone is not able to go out. And at the same time, we all know that we're suffering from Zoom fatigue. We're online working, we're online with meetings, we're online with our family, we're online for education. So now we have an additional barrier to that wellness to combat. So again, I'm just throwing barriers out, questions, and hoping through conversations like this, we can help not only ourselves, but our community and our fellow professionals to find answers so that we can continue moving forward towards a wellness.
Well, Stella, I will say that I love the phrase Zoom fatigue. And I feel Zoom fatigue having been on Zoom today for about 6 hours. But saying that, let's look at the glass half full. Zoom or any online platform, that could be the answer. Because then people don't have to come to the studio. We can reach communities. That is what has been so amazing with online education. I myself have been, although we used online before, I became so inspired by how many people we can reach at the same time with online platforms. And that actually may be the answer. Yes, we may feel fatigued, but we can reach people as long as they've got a way, as long as they have got a screen in front of them, they can turn it on. It can be a phone, a tablet, and a computer. And we could start offering classes to anyone. I mean, we can reach out to communities. And that may be the way to do it, because to bring people to the studio is tough.
It's tough on the best of times.
Tough in the best of times.
And even more challenging now. So, Rael, you're more familiar with Joseph and his philosophy. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I remember reading somewhere that he was hoping Pilates would actually be part of physical education for children. Can you speak more about that? Because I think that's another void that Pilates itself has not been able to fulfill.
He didn't write very much. And by the way, today is Joseph Pilates' birthday. So shout out to Joseph Pilates. Happy birthday, Joe. We all love you and we cherish what you have given us. Joseph Pilates didn't write very much. He did, by many accounts I have heard, first-hand accounts, want Pilates to be done by everyone, and certainly had a passion for it to be introduced into schools. And yes, physical education, physical activity is lowest on the totem pole. And I'm not talking about sport. Sport is an extracurricular activity that kids can do. It's often competitive. I am talking about movement, exercise for well-being, what Joseph Pilates intended Pilates to be. And he did want that. I tried to draw out of John Steele more about his personal conversations with Joseph Pilates. It seems as if certainly in his conversations with John Steele, it was very single track. And it was very much about contrology and that everyone needs to do contrology. How much his emphasis was on getting it into the schools, I cannot say. I did hear that from Romana, I did hear it from Kathy, from Ron Fletcher, Eve Gentry. I'm not sure if she ever told me that, but certainly Romana did and Kathy Grant did, that he wanted kids to do Pilates. He wanted it in schools because I think he realized that a healthy body is a healthy mind, a healthy child is a healthy society. That's it. That's why I'm such a strong believer that we need to make social statements, not just teach up in our studios.
Brian, so we have, we've kind of gone full circle in our society, and diversifying companies has been meaning more of inviting more brown and black people into different companies, inviting more women. But we know that diversification also means inviting other populations into it. And it's a challenge when we talk about fitness, because now we're looking at not only inviting, different ethnicities, but we're looking at inviting different populations unto themselves. And I'm talking more about the physically, and again, I apologize in advance if the term is not correct, the physically challenged, veterans, people that are, that may be blind or that may be deaf. These are other areas that we need to expand in for wellness, because they need it too. So again, I guess my question back to both of you is, how do we create a space that is safe and inclusive, not only for brown and black people, but for other areas in our population that could benefit from wellness?
Well, first of all, I love the Planet Fitness motto of no judgment zone.
Yes, the no judgment zone.
The no judgment zone. So that is, I just love that. I would love to borrow that. But we need to create a zone that is a non-judgment zone, meaning anyone and everyone that walks in whatever way they are different to the norm, should feel welcome in the environment. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think we need to run courses that specialize in working with special ed, special education, working with the aging population. I'll be teaching a workshop next year called The Power of Aging, working with the aging population so that our students can go out into those communities, work in different homes for the elderly, work with people that are physically challenged, mentally challenged, work with different populations. It's going to be an outreach. We can't bring everyone here. We need to educate the teachers to go out there.
Brian?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's super interesting. That's a great question, Stella, because I think, man, it's loaded. Just because, I'm obviously, I'm Black, right? So my main concern is the people that I grew up with. That's my main concern. I'm looking at that first, because I'm looking at those scenarios and those situations. And a lot of times people take this, especially during this whole movement. That's why it's been great. It's almost like saying Black Lives Matter. It's like all lives matter. It's like, yeah, we get it. We understand that every single person should be cared for, right? No one's saying that's not true. But at the same time, we're having a systematic problem specifically with this one group. You know what I'm saying? So I think that needs to be addressed inside of the inclusiveness, and I think it can be done. I don't think it's one or the other. Black Lives Matter, screw everyone else. That's ridiculous. It's not, no one's saying that, right? They're saying uplift these people, uplift everyone. But these people, again, have been purposely pushed back. Slavery is slavery, right? this was not a little thing. So financially, so when I think about resources and everything given, I look at this group of people that literally wasn't able to acquire wealth for 230 years. Then from that, they really weren't able to. They weren't able to buy houses in the 50s, because of redlining. We can go on and on. You got mass incarceration in the 70s and 80s. We're literally going on and on, even today, to what we have going on, to someone's foot on someone's neck. So I get the inclusion of everyone, right? So I am an advocate of that, but it would be, I need to focus on what needs to be done for the specific group that was purposely pushed back as well. And by saying that, I know, again, a lot of people do think that I'm excluding other people by saying that. So by saying to someone, and pardon me if the term is incorrect, a challenge, I'm not sure of the correct term either. So, someone physically challenged, by no means am I saying, don't think about that person, or that person doesn't deserve X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, in this discussion, the height that we're talking about, I just think it's important that we don't lose focus, because I think that's what happens all the time. We kind of lose focus. We're like, oh, this is screwed up. And then we're like, but everything's screwed up. It's like, yeah, but we got to focus on this. Just take care of this. And when you take care of that, you'll be taking care of a lot of other things at the same time, right? Because when it's good for Black people, then it's going to be good for a lot of other people, because the mindset's going to be people need to be treated well, right? Not just Black people. It doesn't stop there. The slogan isn't just those people, right? But it starts there, and then we go on. We have Indigenous, we have the physically challenged. We have a lot to work on. So that's a very interesting topic for me. So thanks so much for bringing that up, because how to navigate in that space without being, without neglecting one group, but at the same time saying, now we got to take care of this,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really why I wanted to bring it up, because it is challenging, and many corporations are finding themselves scrambling. And and that's the only word I can come up with all the research I've been doing, is that they're finding themselves scrambling, but at the same time, they're also being faced with a lot of I want to say, criticism. We talked about earlier how it doesn't feel genuine, and BASI feels genuine because it's been what you've been doing. It is you. You grew up that way. But a lot of, corporations, Brian, you mentioned yesterday in our talk that you were going through people's Instagram and you saw the one black square and then nothing else. So it's like, how do we keep, it goes back to my first question, how do we keep the momentum going, keep it in the forefront, and then hold ourselves accountable to keep the change going? We know we've got the seed and we're trying to nurture it. How do we keep watering it and giving it what it needs to keep that energy there?
Well, definitely from myself, definitely conversations like this, that's why I was super excited to be having it, because I think just having the dialogue, think about this, this kind of dialogue a year and a half ago, right? It's just not as likely. I mean, maybe with you, Rael, it's hard because maybe with the things that you were trying to open up, but normally speaking, there's no black dots or black lives. No one cared about that. As a matter of fact, if you said Black Lives Matter, trust me, I know, if you said it, you were literally an outcast. You were a cop killer. You were the worst thing on the world. Now it's like like you say, you got it in your shirt, everyone's wearing it. So it wasn't always this way. The progress is awesome right now that we're making, to be honest with you. Just because we are able to have this conversation, people are going to be like, this is weird, they're like, oh, this is normal. This is kind of like what happens now,
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Brian, that we have moved things forward. We have moved the needle. Now we need to keep those conversations going. Brian's passion is Black Lives Matter. I'm passionate about, whatever I'm passionate about. My mother, her whole life was devoted to physically and mentally challenged individuals, not just children, adults as well. I know I don't have what she had. That was her passion. And, I've had a different passion. So we've all got to work in our lane, but acknowledge that we're all together moving the needle, all together. Brian, I've got to tell a funny story. When we moved to this building right here in 2017, Brian was kind enough to come and help us.
Yes.
Because I said, LaToya, you've got to bring Brian. I need help. So Brian and I were driving around in a U-Haul in 2017. Brian, you remember this? And I said to Brian, can you get me a Black Lives Matter t-shirt? And Brian kind of laughed because he thought I was kidding. And I said, no, serious. I'm not just saying it because I really want to belong to this movement. And I told Brian a bit about my history. And it was just a really cool moment because it was just authentic. Brian looked at me like, he thought maybe I was coming from a different place.
Yes.
And since then, Brian, thank you for providing me with the t-shirt. And I wear it proudly. But I think Brian's so right in what he says that it can't just be, okay, I've got a t-shirt, now I'm finished. Now I belong to the cause. No, you don't. You've got to work. You've got to work every day, every night at it to move that needle, to move society as a whole. Last night I was watching Don Lemon on CNN. And Don Lemon, who, for those who don't know, is an African-American man, and he is a gay man. And he was interviewing the governor of Colorado, who is a gay man. And he finished the interview and he said, wow, things have changed. He said, it's not that long ago that I came out. It was only like 5 years ago or something. And he said, here I am on national TV. I'm just interviewing a gay governor of a state. And it seems completely normal, and both of us are just talking, and I'm interviewing him, and people are watching, and we've moved the needle. I was so happy. I mean, to see Don and the governor of Colorado talking, you know, it didn't seem unnatural. He was asking about the first husband, which is this man's husband, and I just thought it was fantastic. I think as a society, most days I feel we're moving the needle. There are days, I cannot be disingenuous, where I feel in our environment today, I've got to be honest, I feel that sometimes that people are struggling to push that needle back. They're struggling to push that needle back. And no, we cannot let that happen. We have got to keep it as a society. And we'll all have our own passions, but we've got to keep it moving forward.
Brian, I noticed, and I mean not noticing, but as a woman of color, I find a lot of times that when I'm speaking to my brothers and sisters, that the level of patience is very short for change. I don't know, it's almost like a short fuse. It's like, and then sometimes I have to admit I lose patience with it because I think, well, this is really easy. Why can't we just do that? Words of advice. I mean, I'm looking for comfort, I guess, because it can be very frustrating working in some systems. And I know that in my heart, I feel like, why is this such a struggle? Why is it so hard to just say, okay, we can't do this anymore. We're moving to do this.
For me, that just reminds me, I was just reading before we came out here, I was listening to Warren Buffett, and he was saying, no one wants to get rich slow. And the analogy that I'm bringing that up, or why I'm bringing it up, is because it's going to take time, and I'm super impatient too. You know how, we are overdue. I can go on and on, right? But at the end of the day, it's going to take time, like this isn't the type of needle that's going to just rev this way, it's going to take time. And I don't want to hear that personally. And I know a lot of other people don't, but when I think about all the great progresses in my life, the fitness journey, right? Just my emotional journey, my spiritual journey, there was ups and, there was rough times, bad times, but it went up in slow increments. It wasn't like one day I was like, oh my God, I feel good. It's like, your life, right? You're constantly just trying to go up, almost like a stock. That's why I was bringing up the Warren Buffett, just kind of keep that steady increase, right? Like, because it's not going to be, tomorrow everything has changed. You know how long it's going to take to unravel all those systems that I was saying to put in place to stop people? Think about how long it took to put in place. So I'm ready for the long fight. And I would encourage people to think of it that way, right? This is a marathon. We're mile 83, right? So we got a lot, we're exhausted and we got a ways to go, right? So it's just that type of mentality I think that we have to have. That's what helps me, because I don't even see an end, right? I'm just forward. That's the way I see it, person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Brian. It's not a quick fix. Mm-hmm. And I use the analogy of Pilates. We say it to our students all the time. You don't come to this course and suddenly you know Pilates and you're a teacher, and that's it. It is a lifelong pursuit. It's not a quick fix, and it's changing all the time. And so we say that to our students. And it brings me back to South Africa. Listening to Roy and reading his book about South Africa in the middle of the 20th century, 1940s, 1950s, the 60s, apartheid was so strong. Then you look at South Africa today, Nelson Mandela, who thought that he'd get out of prison and the people would be emancipated and there would be equality. And South Africa has its problems and it has its struggles, but it took years. And look where it is today. The needle moved. But if people like Nelson Mandela wouldn't have had that patience, 7 years in prison, that's patience. That is just watching, dripping, and it happens one drop at a time. And Lesedi Lebota, that is what we're going to be going back and giving money, helping, giving resources. They found a partner in us. It's about just moving it slowly forward. You can't be impatient with those things. I'm an impatient person by nature. Brian strikes me as someone very impatient. Brian and I share that. But both of us know that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Brian, there's some new terms that have come up out of this, and one of them is finding an ally, an allyship. I believe that's the term. Can you explain that to me?
So just in terms of allyship?
Yes, allyship.
Yeah, that's what's been the most encouraging for me. That's why I know things have changed, because other people besides Black people care about this now. That's just simply the shift. So the allies, have been there. They're coming out like, this is wrong. I mean, that's what it's going to take. Obviously we think it's wrong. We've been screaming it for years. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but deaf ears, right? But now we have support. We have support now. I say, you know what? Those guys are right. This ain't fair. So now that's why it's real to me now. That's why the needle is definitely changing, because we have the support of our colleagues, right? Of the human race saying, wait, this is wrong. Yeah. So that allyship, that's what I see it as, and that's why I'm so optimistic, because we have allyship.
Yeah, it's in really, I'm excited about that term, and I'm really excited that we do have these allies. I mean, even Dr. King had allies, and and that helped, move the civil rights movement forward to get the Civil Rights Act available for us so that we could vote. So it is important that we have these allies to help keep the message out and keep it moving forward. Did you guys know that in 2040, the majority of the United States workforce will be a diverse ethnicity?
I did know that.
So this is something that, when we talk about wellness and how the fitness industry needs to change, we need to look at that labor force, how that's going to be changing in the future, because that is the foundation. That is going to be our future, where we're pulling our resources and getting the talent into our industry. So do we have any questions, Karina? Any comments?
I want to just say one thing about allyship.
Yes.
And that is that none of us can do anything alone. Want to do something, we need allies. We need BASI. Let's look right at BASI. I could never do it without you, without the hundreds of people, thousands of people out there, every single day. So we can't, from our simple individual lives to our businesses to society as a whole, we cannot do it alone. We need allies. And we need to lend our voice to different causes. And going back to Black Lives Matter, just before we take a question, it's amazing how it's changed, because when, just a few months ago, when George Floyd happened and there was this resurgence of attention to Black Lives Matter, and at that time you would hear so much of this, well, all lives matter, all lives matter. You don't hear it as much, because people are now getting the message. It's not that they're saying Black lives, that any life, other life doesn't matter, or that all lives don't matter. Of course all lives matter equally. But these people, this group, has been pushed down, suppressed. And we're saying they matter, we matter, Black lives matter. And I think that question is asked less and less now. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing, because we've moved it forward. We've moved the conversation forward, even in these 6 months.
Yeah, that is encouraging to hear that that's happening, because again, you're talking about small steps.
Yeah.
And we have to acknowledge the small steps in moving that needle, and patience. And I'm a Taurus, and I'm supposed to be patient. Mm-hmm. But again, sometimes it just, like everybody else, up and down. Just keep the eye on the goal.
It. I mean, I'm a news addict, so I'm always listening, and I don't hear that question anymore. I don't hear that rhetoric anymore, that, well, all lives matter. What do you mean Black lives matter? All lives matter. We don't hear that as much anymore. I think people are getting it. I hope. I may be optimistic, but I hope so.
Yeah.
Questions are coming in from the audience to our moderator.
What's the question?
Hi guys, I had a question.
Oh,
Latoya. Hey.
Well, it's more like a statement, and I want to preface this by saying that, like, I'm completely biased. But Stella, in the beginning of the session, you asked a question, like, how do you make the scholarships, specifically the Kathy Grant scholarship that BASI Pilates is offering, not seem like a handout? And I know for a fact, this is not just a Black thing, but any person of color knows that in order to do anything and get equal pay or equal respect as our heterosexual white male counterparts, we have to do it 150 times better. BASI Pilates education, this is where my disclaimer comes in, is the best of the best. You know what I'm saying? Nice. So you're not just saying, here's money to go learn. This is how you're going to be the best in your field. You know, we're offering mentorship and guidance after. It's not just one and done, we're paying for it and you're gone. You literally become a part of the BASI family, and you become the best in the field. You know, I read so many comments, and everyone comes into BASI because their best Pilates instructor was a BASI Pilates instructor. So that's why I don't feel that it's not the monetary value at all. It's the fact that you're going to be the best in your field. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Love that. Wow. Thanks, Latoya.
Thank you, Latoya.
Appreciate it.
Great.
I have a question from Jaziel. What are practical ways to really start to move the needle forward systemically?
Wow. Brian, I'm going to let you start, I guess.
You know,
hear the question.
Can you repeat the question? I wasn't able, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was.
What are the practical ways to really start to move forward?
To move the needle forward.
Move the needle forward systemically.
What are practical ways to move the needle forward systemically? So how do we create systemic change?
Yeah.
And I always point to the top, because that's where it starts and ends, you know. Rael, you know that. I mean, so, you know, we got to create the culture where we're thinking about this. We're mindful. You just made such a great point, Rael, about that. Thank you so much for bringing that up about the Black Lives Matter, about all lives matter, and how you don't hear it anymore. I mean, just little things like that. So that's progress. You know, at office places, I know mine, you know, I get questions, you know, we'll be in a Zoom meeting or anything like that, and someone will say, hey, was that insensitive? And I'm like, you know, 2 years ago, that never would have been asked, you know, but just creating these cultures where we're being sensitive about the people around us, and we're thinking, right? I mean, how are we hitting anyone? Am I doing everything I can to be inclusive? Things like that. So that I always start at the top and just trying to create cultures from the top.
Yes, I agree with Brian 100%. Systemic change is a very difficult thing, and certainly starting at the top is an excellent way to do it, and that's why, you know, we're trying to get all the time the government to change, the Congress to change, pass laws, pass regulations that will bring about change. But we also have to do it at a grassroots level, the way we live our lives. Just being good to people, respectful to all people. All people always respect people. Everyone deserves respect, whether they, you know, whatever position they hold in life, whatever their station is in life, they deserve respect, dignity, speak in a nice way. That's how we start bringing about change. It sounds so simple, but just, you know, when the janitorial people walk in here, I always take a moment to speak to them. How are you? You know, are you doing okay? You know, just speak. People that we order food a lot now.
Yeah.
We order food out a lot. So when they bring it to the door, I try to have a little conversation with them. Just these little things make people feel, wow, we're not lesser. We are the same. We happen to be doing another job, but we are the same. And I think that's how we move the needle, each one of us in our own lives, how we walk our talk. That is how we move the needle at a grassroots level. But of course, Brian is correct that these big changes, these big systemic changes come from the top.
Yeah, a lot of the articles I've read have echoed exactly what both of you have said, that in order for any change to happen, whether it's in our government or in our corporations or organizations, it comes from the top. The top is the one that sets the tone for everything else that happens. And if the top is not buying into it, then no one else in the company or the organization is going to buy into it. So that's, that you're just echoing exactly again, but also it is local change. Every little step that we do as a human being is what is going to make that difference. And yes, Brian, I've been on many conversations like you where someone will say something and then they turn around and go, is that wrong? Am I being offensive? And it's interesting because that would never happen, number one, but also as a woman, even when we were talking about equal rights for women, you never heard that happening. No man would ever turn around and go, did I offend you? But now that it's reached this level of social awareness, it's starting to be part of that conversation. And people want to learn, and people are willing to learn. And I think that's also what happened with this movement coming around. I don't want to say a second time, but coming around again, is that people really want to learn how to do better and what it means to be better.
Can I speak to I just want to be really clear about, thank you for mentioning the grassroots, Rael. I mean, coming from me, right? I mean, grassroots is super important. But what I'm seeing is, I just read on movements, right? I read on movements all over the world. Movements, grassroots, and I love it. I'm part of the grassroots. The grassroots, but what I'm learning is the grassroots is kind of, don't get me wrong, I love being a part of the grassroots, but it's kind of a necessity. Like, people are in this grassroots because they have to. We need each other, right? So we're doing this because, not because we don't want to, don't get me wrong, but there's also a necessity in it as well. I think it has to be the type of thing where the top is thinking that way as well, that it's a necessity, right? Because they don't need it as much. They're good in their own, they're good where they are, right? They don't really need to change anything. So I think the grassroots is great. I didn't want to belittle as well, but I think we've seen a history of grassroots coming and the top just kind of beating it down, right? So we are making this progress, but right now, I think we need the progress of the top moving and the grassroots moving it up as well. We can't have this thing anymore. That's where we are. We keep hitting this because we might get a little way and then it just comes back, right? It goes a little way, comes back, Now, it's again, actually, you can march in the streets based on racism. Like, this literally came back. You know what I'm saying? Because I think there's been this acceptance at the top. There's been sort of like acceptance that this is what can happen. So I think that the grassroots is awesome. I never want to take the focus on that, but it's like, we need a little help. We need some help from the top now. They got to bend.
Definitely.
So then, how do we influence the top? How do we influence the top is the next question, because we all agree it has to start from the top. So what does that look like?
Well, part of it is voting. I know that we are vote fatigued, but the fact is, I take the lead from one of the greatest men that I know of all time, and that is Barack Obama. He is such an eloquent, good, decent, wonderful man, and he speaks so eloquently about the importance of voting. We need to have our voice heard, and voting is incredibly important. That's how you bring about change in a democratic society, and that's what we live in, is a democratic society. Now, you have heads of organizations also, not just government, but also organizations, and that is, we need to bring about change in the organizations. And that starts from here. We're an education company. We're educating. As educators, how we treat people is part of our education. It's not just how to do the 100. It's that each person's an individual. And each person, it's not just clumping people together in a group and do the same thing. No, each person's an individual. That's always been taught in BASI, that you need to see people as individuals.
Yeah. So again, we're at that moment where it's all about holding ourselves accountable, holding our industry accountable, and voting. Because even in our industry, we can vote, we can change things, we can meet with legislation. But it all starts back, and I know Brian hates that word grassroots, because we are looking at making local change to affect global change. And so we want to understand what we can do locally to move the needle more globally. I mean, it's great we have the awareness. Everybody's there. But now what are the steps? I mean, we have BASI, we have you. We have other schools that are kind of trying to find their way through this. And what the BASI has done has always been organic. And that's why I'm here, because I believe it's organic, it's authentic, it doesn't feel fake or disingenuous at all. You've been doing it. This is your walk, this is your talk, you've been doing it. But how do we help other people in our industry kind of join this conversation and keep it moving forward? It's one thing what I'm trying to avoid is everybody going in their own little bubble because of their schools, and then we're never really reaching out to get ourselves as a community moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think there may be a silver lining to what is happening, and that's that it may bring more Pilates schools and Pilates organizations together under a completely different umbrella as to what is the breathing pattern you use on the teaser. It does sound so ridiculous, but I've sat in many a meeting and many a conference where, people get so emotional about whether it's an inhale or an exhale. But maybe this will allow Pilates as an industry to refocus, to recalibrate, and to come together about a completely different discussion. Mm-hmm. And going back to Brian, I just want to say one thing for Brian, and that is, I think Brian really loves the grassroots and praises grassroots. And so, Brian, I just wanted to correct Stella. I know you don't hate the grassroots.
I didn't mean that you hate them, I'm sorry.
No, Brian and I are grassroots people. But Brian is absolutely right. If you don't change the top comes down to push you down all the time. Mm-hmm. So, but going back to our industry, we need to create forums. Stella, you're on the board of the PMA. That's one of the forums, to find commonality and stop, arguing about breath patterns and start finding a way to move us forward as an industry together. And that's one of the ways, because even in our industry, not everyone is equal. There's not enough representation.
It's not enough.
I don't want to say that not everyone is equal, because I think by and large in our industry, people have respect for others, but there's not enough representation of certain segments of the population. So we need dialogue. How do we go out to those underrepresented populations, make them part of the conversation and then part of the industry?
Yeah. Well, I rest assured that I'm using my seat on the board with the PMA to bring these concerns up and to push the needle forward. We're looking at diversity not only for Black and Brown, but also for LBGTQ. I know I said that probably wrong, but we're looking for that. We're looking at how to teach to others, but again, it is about getting the representation there. And they've made a step, and now we just need to keep pushing the needle and taking more steps. And Brian, this is why I asked that question about patience, because this is where that patience needs to come in. It's kind of, I want to say, teaching a new choreography. It's like learning a new Pilates style, but it's a new way for having the organization to think.
So I put the question in the chat, and it seems like you guys kind of touched on quite a bit, because my question in the chat was just, if we're pointing to the top of the Pilates industry specifically, are we even looking to the PMA anymore? Or are we looking to the heads of our school, like Rael? And when we look to hold ourselves accountable or to self-regulate our industry, who is on the line to actually do that? Like, who is able to hold someone's feet to the fire because when they air, we saw an example of a hate crime in our industry, and there's no justice to that. Like, who is on the line to that individual as a teacher maybe losing their certification? Like, is that an appropriate step? When it comes to BASI as a school, separately, is there a code of ethics that's out there that if you knew a teacher you had trained crossed, do you have anything that outlines what you would do about that within the school, much less within our industry, and in our industry, if not BASI, who?
Wow.
Thank you for that amazing question. If I'll step in. I was one of the founding board members of the PMA, and the PMA has had its long history. But I cannot talk for the PMA, although you ask a very legitimate question. Who is the body? I think the PMA is the closest to that body that would guide this community. But you're absolutely correct. There was a terrible incident within our community, and there've probably been others that we haven't heard of or weren't publicized quite as much. And what tools do we have to, in a way, take action for what was committed? I found it terrible. I spoke out against it. But what can really be done? The PMA have the tools to a point, but they also have their limitations as to what they can do legally. So, it's a very good question, very difficult one, but you have put a challenge in front of me, and I promise you that I'm going to rise to the challenge, because we have values in our organization, very simple: passion, compassion, and excellence. And we teach how to behave as teachers, but we don't have a written code of ethics, and we don't have a written guidelines or rules, or regulations of what we would do if something like that happened within BASI. I think I would know what my instinct would be. It would be very harsh, my response to something like that. But we need a legal leg to stand on. So you have put a challenge in front of me, and I need to do better, because after 32 years, BASI, in that way, it's kind of been almost oral law. It's passed down through the generations, how we behave. But in today's world, that's not good enough. So I will, you can check in a while, give me a little bit of time, but we will have a code of ethics, we will have bylaws, and we will have ways of dealing with people, and probably it will be taking away, if we can, I will check into it legally, taking away their BASI qualification. But I need to check whether there's so many legal barriers. And I know that the PMA really, I think, tried to do their best, but they had, they're also boxed in certain ways, that they can't just act as each individual may have wanted to act, but organizations have all kinds of restraints and restrictions. But I will do better for you, 100%.
Any other questions?
She says thank you very much.
Ah.
No questions, just everyone says it's very important to talk about this.
Okay, Stella, no further questions?
Well then, I hope you guys will continue the conversation in our social media. We do have another event coming up in January, and we're going to be going deeper. Today was just like an introduction, and I want to first of all thank BASI for giving me this platform and allowing me the space to have these conversations. It's very important to me, and I've always wanted to help move socially, have social change. So I am very appreciative for that. Thank you. don't forget to join us on Friday, and I'm going to pass that back to Rael.
Le sedi le bato. Le sedi le la bato. Le sedi la bato. Le sedi la bato. I said it wrong again earlier, but I think I've got it now. And forgive me. I mean, my tongue would say these words so
You've been
easily,
talking all day.
but I have been talking for many hours today. Please join us. It's the most incredible organization. We will have much to say about them. We'll have their links up. The Sedi La Bato, and they do incredible work raising women, empowering women. Please join us on Friday for a math class and a Q&A, and we'll have more discussions like this.
Yes, and of course, if you want to donate for the Kathy Grant Scholarship, please feel free. You can just go to the link and donate for that. Also, if you want to donate for La Sedi, oh my Lord, I am Lobato, and I used to have a good tongue with language too. You don't feel obligated to come. We'd love to have you participate, but again, your dollars are going towards a very worthwhile organization, empowering women, helping women in South Africa uplift themselves and provide, and also making social change for South Africa. And again, please, thank you again. We appreciate you joining us, and we love to hear more on the conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rael. And thank you, Brian. Oh my God. Brian, thank you so much for your time and your input. And we hope to see you again in January when we do this again.
Forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, my brother. Love being with you on a panel.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you.